I want to start off by saying that everybody in this story is safe, but it's one of the closest calls that I've ever had in my life, and I feel like I have to tell my story in order to raise awareness. I live in a major city in practically the pit of hell state. Born and raised here, and I'm very familiar with my surroundings. I'm also aware of the fact that my city is one of the worst hubs for human trafficking, and living here can be very, very dangerous. Despite all of this, I've really taken pride in knowing that I can do everything I can to remain as safe as possible. I mean, I've had close calls before, so I'm always pretty prepped. At the time, I had 2 things of pepper spray, one in my favorite jacket pocket and one velcroed to my desk at work. I also had 2 trusty pocket knives, one always on me and one in my car door pocket. Oh, and my taser literally never leaves my bag. I avoid shady situations at all costs, and despite being a really small lady, I really know my stuff. Yay for self-defense classes. My point in telling you all this is I'm a very paranoid small chihuahua, and I still got into a really scary situation. Alright, on to the story. It's summer and it's hot as hell. I've got a date with my favorite gal pal, and I swing by her place to pick her up. She tells me that first she has to go to a job interview, and I agree to go with her. No big deal. She's a really sweet tiny thing from a small town in the Midwest, and she's pretty new to the city life, as well as to all the wild things that can happen here. As we drive into a different city, I ask her about the job. Oh, it's a modeling gig. Oh, cool. For who? I say. I found an ad on Craigslist. It's just sport clothes. The Craigslist thing sets a really small but distant alarm off in my head, but I just push it to the side. Where the heck are we going anyway? I say when we then pull up to a Starbucks a bit outside of the city. The alarm in my head becomes a little less faint at this point. Just relax, I tell myself. I've gone to legit job interviews at coffee shops before. There's always been a good reason. We arrive first, still kinda late, but end up waiting about 15 minutes. Kinda weird, but Kat's relieved that we're not the rude ones when she then gets a text saying he's here. I look around the Starbucks and outside of the parking lot trying to figure out who the mystery man can be, when I then noticed a tall, well-dressed man step out of a black SUV. The man then smiles at us as he then approaches us, and I figure that's gotta be our guy. I could have sworn though that the SUV had been parked there for a while. I ask Kat if she wants me to step in line to grab her a drink, but she practically begs me to stay with her. Okay, I can do that. I don't think it'd look very professional, but I won't protest. The man, who goes by the name Jack, then leads us to an isolated table outside and doesn't really say much about my presence other than it was okay for me to be there. I get on my phone and I shoot a text to my fiance explaining where I was and what I was doing. He shoots me back a be careful, and I pretty much just sit there to watch the show. Jack had this really strange accent that I just couldn't place my finger on. Looking back though, I'm not even sure it was real. He starts asking Kat the usual questions, and I notice she's absolutely bombing the interview. She doesn't have much experience and didn't really bother to bring a portfolio, but despite this, he doesn't really seem to care. The alarm in my head now was much louder than a whisper, but it completely blares when he then asks her if she'd be comfortable doing lingerie shoots as well. Dear sweet Kat says she doesn't have an issue with it, but would prefer to mostly do sports clothing like they had discussed earlier. She asks to see some of his work, and he then pulls up a lingerie Instagram. All lingerie, no clothing at all. He holds it in front of her face and then pulls it away pretty much immediately. And when she asked if there was going to be more that she'd be doing, Jack says, "That was it," and then just kinda hurries the conversation along. He says that we need to leave right now to go to his studio at a place that he briefly mentioned the name of to sign papers and get everything squared away. It has to be done today. He's not working tomorrow and his coworkers won't do it right. I absolutely hate everything about this, and I'm trying to glare some sense into her, but nothing is getting through. Kat then agrees, and he then turns his attention to me.
So, do you want in on this too?
I immediately know that nothing about this is professional. I then look down at my beat-up docs, my green cargo pants, and a shirt that has flames on it and a slightly edgy logo, and I really can't help but scoff. That's not really my thing. I'm just the ride, I say. He kind of just studies me for a second, and then he says we can all ride with him, then directing all of his attention to Kat. No, I don't want to leave my car here. We'll follow you. He looks kind of offended that I butted in, but then he asked where we parked. Right in front of the store. I got it, I said. I pull Kat to the Jeep to make sure we walk behind him. As soon as we get into the car, I then lock the doors and just try and keep from freaking out. We're not going. This doesn't feel right. What about the lingerie? I say. Literally everything I say, she has an excuse for it. We pull out of the parking lot and I follow Jack's SUV, but the whole time I'm just trying to figure out how to get the hell out of this. Kat doesn't like lingerie, but this could be a door for her, and she desperately needs the money. I mean, what if it is legit though? He was alone anyways. You have your knife and pepper spray, right? She asked. Of course I do, but I'm 5'2" to this man's 6'3", and Jack could very much have friends. And I mean, I don't want to possibly kill or be killed. I realize now Kat is totally batshit. We drive along as I try to talk to her, and we start driving out into the desert, pretty much the middle of absolute nowhere. I notice that there's a divider in the road that prevents U-turns, and I get a really eerie feeling that Jack knew to take us this way. I'm absolutely desperate at this point. I pull out my phone and snap a picture of Jack's SUV license plate. I upload it to Snapchat where all of my friends can see it. Kat starts getting uncomfortable once she then realizes how far we've driven. The name of the place he mentioned springs back into my head, and I know it's familiar from somewhere. A commercial jingle that was distant but catchy. It's a restaurant or hotel or something. He wouldn't have a studio there. Please just look it up, I tell Kat. So she does, and guess what? It's a casino. Now, unless this man had rented out a space, he wouldn't have a studio there. With the information he gave us, it was totally inconsistent. Kat is totally freaked out at this point. I tell her that this really isn't uncommon, and he was trying to confuse us the entire time. Throughout the entire interview, she had a confused and hesitant look on her face, like this wasn't what she was promised or expecting at all. Kat finally agrees that we need to get the hell out of here, and I start to breathe easy again. I notice that every 5 or so minutes, there's a break in the medians. It's a rough quick stop and turn around, but it'll just have to do. So I do, and we absolutely gun it. Kat gets a call from Jack, and at first she ignores it. I convince her to call back, but nothing. It was like the number had blocked her, or it just didn't go through. I then tell her to screenshot the ad on Craigslist, but she can't find it anywhere. It's like every trace of Jack just magically disappeared. We go back to Kat's apartment, and I tell her she needs to report it immediately. She promises she will, but she'll do it later because she doesn't want her husband to know. He didn't even know that she had this interview to begin with, and she didn't want him to know what happened. If I hadn't driven her, she would have gone alone, without ever telling a single soul, and who knows what could have happened. I tried not to scold her too badly, but I just wanted to remind her that our city was very different from where she's from. It's really dangerous out here. So, sweet Kat, I hope you're a little more awakened to the world, and I'm really sorry for that. It's been a few months since we split ways, and I'm still worried to death over all the oblivious crazy things that you get into. Since this incident, I've now upgraded the 3 pepper sprays, and I now have a new pocket knife that I can carry around everywhere. I'm almost 4 months pregnant, and I'm now finally ready to get the hell out of this dangerous city. Please everyone, be safe out there, and be damned careful with Craigslist. And to Jack, if you're really the scary guy that my gut deemed you to be, screw you, and let's definitely not encounter each other ever again. And again guys, please be careful everywhere and anywhere, and always, always trust your gut. Perhaps I'm overreacting, but something happened today that I want to share and hear your thoughts on. A friend had forwarded me a Craigslist ad for some dolls with a decent amount of extras for $50. An exceptionally good price for how much stuff it was. I sent an email back but got no response, so I just thought, oh well, someone probably beat me to it, I guess. At 9:45 p.m., I then got an email back that then said,
Sorry, I've been out all day today. Where can you pick it up?
Sent from an iPhone. I responded, I could pick it up tomorrow. What time and where do you want to meet at? Got no response, so I went to bed. The next morning, I was really dragging from the time change, so I didn't really check my email until about 10 a.m. There was an email from the person that then said,
I waited at the chapel school for about 10 minutes and you're not here, so I'm gonna leave.
Once again sent from an iPhone. I write back that I'm really sorry but that I didn't get any emails last night before going to bed, and I literally just got up, so I didn't know I had an appointment. I'm happy to come by your home if that's convenient. It's only a 30-minute drive for me. She emails me back saying it's fine and that we can meet in an hour at the school. I decided to Google it and find that there's actually 2 chapel schools in the town, so I sent another email asking which one it is. Deafening silence. Now, since I had already stood her up once and potentially missed out on this really fantastic deal, I was going. So I jumped in my car and sent another email, saying which school that I picked from the 2 that I listed and that I was on my way. I get there and it's the weekend, so the school is obviously going to be closed. I never got an email back specifying which exact school it was, so I was just really hoping I was at the right one. Within about 5 minutes, a black SUV pulls up next to me with a really pleasant looking couple in their late 30s and 2 large dogs in the back seat. The man is driving and he stays in the driver's seat. The woman gets out holding a really large closed box. She says that if I want to, I can look through it first, as I was handing her the $50. The woman is still talking and we're standing at the right front fender of her SUV. I can see the guy now get out of the car and walk to the back of the vehicle. I thought that maybe he was just checking on the dogs from the back hatch, but no. He walks around the rear of the vehicle and then comes up behind me in my blind spot. I kind of just turned to look at him with a really startled look because I just really thought it was odd. He has this really blank looking half smile on his face and he won't make eye contact. My skin started to crawl. I got that really sinking feeling deep in the pit of my stomach. I then became acutely aware that there was not another soul around us. There's literally no reason for him to have gotten out of the car and come up behind me like that. The transaction was over. They had effectively trapped me right between the 2 vehicles. I threw the box in my car while keeping an eye on the guy and bolted the hell out of there. If his intent was just to keep his wife safe during the transaction, why did he wait until the money had been exchanged to get out of the car? And why go the long way around the whole car just to come up behind me when the shortest distance to his wife was around the front where we were closest to? Who goes to the trouble of loading 2 really big dogs in an SUV for a 3-minute ride? I honestly really think the dogs were meant to be a distraction, but I'm not really sure. I honestly wonder if this was a dry run for a kidnapping and then they just got cold feet when they saw I wouldn't be an easy target. It was seriously creepy. Now, I'm not the type of person who sees danger behind every tree, but there was definitely something off about the whole thing. Anyway, I'm really fortunate that I got away okay, but I still can't help but wonder what they were actually planning to do. Maybe it's for the best that I never find out. Back in early of 2014, I was 18 years old and started browsing the world of Craigslist. I had responded to an ad in the personal section, and then I started texting this woman. Now, being 18 years old and unfamiliar with how Craigslist actually works, I didn't really see an issue with meeting her up on a red roof. I also didn't really think there was anything wrong with her asking for donations. Again, 18 years old and really stupid. I figured donation meant optional. Again, stupid I know, but just to be clear, she never gave me an actual price, nor did I tell her I had the money for her. So I set up a time to go meet her. I left my house to head to my GED class as usual, but walked to the red roof instead. It was pouring rain out and it was really warm, so by the time I got there, I was all drenched and really sweaty. I knocked on the room door that she was in, and then she answered. Her attire itself should have really alerted me, but let's say it again. 18 years old and really stupid. She invited me in and I asked if I could use the shower real quick. So I get undressed in the bathroom and hop in the shower, and then she started taking off her top, and then I told her, "That's okay, I won't be long." So she then goes and waits on the bed while watching Steve Wilkos. I then get out of the shower and wrap a towel around me. I came out of the bathroom, then looked at her and I asked if she was ready. She sprawled out on the bed and then she says, "Donations are due up front." At this point, all of the red flags that should have gone off did, as I then realized the situation I was in. My face then dropped as I faced the TV. I nervously told her that I didn't have any money. She then got up and then she started screaming at me, and then she threw my clothes and bag at me. I got dressed and I actually apologized for wasting her time. So I leave her room and I start heading back to my GED class. Before I was even out of the parking lot, a guy in a green car calls me over to him. I tried to ignore him and just walked past until he then shouted to get my attention. So I then walked up to the driver's side of this guy's car and then he starts talking to me. Now, this guy looked absolutely sketchy, and I figured he was just the woman's pimp or something. So he's now talking to me with his left arm up on his door and his right arm down at his side, and he's actually holding a freaking pistol. At this point, I'm almost certain that I'm going to get shot. He says to me,
"So why would you come here knowing you don't have any money?"
I explained as calmly as I could that I really wasn't aware of the situation. The guy pulls up his freaking arm a little bit to show me his gun, and then he says,
"I have messages between you two saying you have money for her."
Now, like I said earlier, I never once told this woman that I had any money for her. So this guy decides to lower his gun, and then he says to me,
"You're really lucky you came to one of my girls. Other girls would have stabbed you with a broken crack pipe. I see you're pretty young, so I'll let you off with a warning this time."
He then began motioning me to be on my way. But you can bet your ass that I kept looking behind me, just to make sure that I wasn't about to be shot from behind. After that happened, I never met up with anyone from Craigslist ever again. My wife and I were looking for a used car on Craigslist, and we actually found one we were really interested in. We contacted the seller and told him we could meet him at a very public mall in about an hour. He then responded that he wouldn't be available until after he got off work at 5. So we agreed to meet him at the mall at 5:30. We arrive at the mall a little early, and we soon get a text that he's running late. So we wait and wait and wait, and then finally get a text from him saying he'll be there around 6:30, and that he should really be getting there really soon. This was in late fall, so it was already getting dark, and we were really starting to worry that the mall wouldn't be as busy soon. A little while later, he sends a text that we should meet him at another address about 30 minutes away in a much more dangerous area of the city. I look up the address and I see that it's a casino and gas station right off the interstate. I figured it would still be pretty busy around 7, so we head over. We pull into the parking lot, but I don't see the car. My wife finally says, "Is that it?" And then she points to a mid-size SUV hatchback. From the way it looked, it seemed like it was the right car, but it was in a really dark part of the parking lot. It was actually squeezed right between some parked 18-wheelers. Now, as two really small petite women, we were very wary of going over there. We locked the doors and then drove over. It was definitely the car, but it was parked in the darkest, most reclusive, least visible spot in the entire parking lot, with the hatch wide open. No lights were on inside of the car, and there was no one around or in the car. I stopped for a couple of seconds to see if someone would come and greet us, and when no one did, I just drove away. I had parked under the casino sign right next to the entrance of the parking lot, and then I texted the guy my location. He responded with,
"I'm right over here by the semis. Come on over."
We pretty much left right away. It was just way too weird. I don't know what he was planning or if he was actually even going to sell us the car, but I'm really glad I never found out. A couple of years ago, I moved with my family right before I started college. Unfortunately for me, it was kind of far from the university that I'd been accepted to, so I had really been trying to find a place that was really close to my university. My dad had helped me and he showed me an ad that he found on Craigslist. There was a really nice looking house for rent and it was pretty close to my university. I decided to set up a meeting and go check the place out. I showed up in the afternoon and unfortunately, I was all alone. My dad said that I was an adult and a big guy, so I shouldn't really be worried about meeting this guy. This really old man then greeted me, and then he says,
"You're gonna have to follow me to get to the house for rent."
I was really confused and then said, "Your ad said this was the house for rent. Why do I have to go somewhere else?" He then says,
"This is my house. I'll take you to the one that's for rent."
I'm a little concerned at this point, but followed him to his other place. I figured if things didn't look right, I could always just leave. We get there and I noticed the house looks really bad and it looked like people were in it. I also want to add that I didn't see any other cars around, so this seemed really odd to me. He looks at me and then he says,
"Don't you want to check it out?"
I don't know. This isn't what was in your ad, and it looks like there's other people here." He tells me that it's just other people that are checking it out as well, and I could just join them. Something just felt really weird about this entire thing, and I told him I wasn't interested anymore. This place looked like it was in really bad shape from the outside, and it appeared to have a lot of people inside of the house. When he asked me why I wasn't interested, I told him that it was just too far of a drive for school and work. He then got mad at me and then accused me of wasting his time. I said, "I'm not the one advertising a house and then telling the person that it's not the one for rent." He began to nervously glance towards the house and he asked if I was sure that I didn't want to check it out. I told him no and then left. Thankfully, he never contacted me again after that. I'm not really sure what his intentions were, but something just felt really wrong. Maybe he really was just trying to show me the house, but I really didn't like that he lied to me about the house to begin with and that there were also other people inside of it. I'm really not sure what was going on there, but I didn't really want to find out. I also really didn't like how he kept looking at the house when he was asking if I was sure that I didn't want to check it out. It seemed really bizarre to me how he went from being mad at me to getting kind of desperate for me to go inside of it. I don't know. The whole thing was just really weird. Technically, this isn't my own story, it's my mother's, but I am slightly involved in it. This happened when I was around 3, possibly 4, since it was in the summer. My parents and I had just moved into a new house in a really safe neighborhood in order to raise me. Basically, they were looking for new 60s themed furniture for our new house, so my mother went to Craigslist to try and find some. She eventually reached out to a man that was selling an older couch. She had just taken me out of preschool before going to his house, so I was in the car with her. Now, my mother is generally a very intelligent woman, although I will admit, her being a first-time mother, this really wasn't the best idea. She had left me in the car because she didn't think it would take too long. The man was standing outside of the house, and according to her, he seemed like a completely average guy, probably in his late 40s. He claimed that the couch was in his basement and that they would have to go down there in order to get it. Apparently, the couch that he showed her was completely different than the one placed in the ad, so she then turned around to ask him about it. He was sweating out of his mind, and he then started asking her a bunch of really creepy questions.
"Are you a virgin? How old are you? Are you married?"
My mother quickly left after that, and she claims that he actually chased after her. She then drove away as quickly as possible. To this day, my mom actually believes that he was going to hit her over the head and then try and sell her or something. I don't know for sure, but it's definitely a pretty creepy story nonetheless. This happened a few years ago, but it still really bugs me to this day. I had just graduated high school, and as a broke soon-to-be college student, I needed some extra cash. So I then took to selling all of my prom dresses on Craigslist. I received a phone call from someone who took interest in one of my dresses, so of course I answered it.
Hello, I was calling about the blue dress that you posted on Craigslist.
I was a little surprised at the fact that it was a raspy man's voice saying this, but I didn't really think too much of it. I had told him the size and the price of it. Nothing too crazy. He said that he and his mother were going on a cruise soon, and that they really needed fancy cocktail attire for an event on the cruise, which isn't that uncommon. So he was calling about the dress for his mother. Then he started asking questions, which at first I wasn't too concerned with, because if I were buying something that pricey, I probably would too. Here's a list of the questions that he had asked me in order, and then my responses.
What size is the dress?
It's about an 8, but it fits more like a 6.
How does it fit, up top?
Normally? I bought it in my size, so it fits me like it normally would.
What size bra do you wear?
I'm sorry, but that isn't really relevant.
Well, I was just wondering. For my mom,
Yeah, well, your mom should probably know what size dress she wears before she shops for them.
Is it a tight dress? Like, was it really tight on you? Can I see pictures of you wearing it?
I can't even form a sentence before he continues on.
And what about panties? Would my mother be able to wear panties? If you even wore any with it. I imagine you didn't. Your voice is so seductive and slutty. Are you a slut?
At this point, I was so appalled that I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth. Everything that he said came so fast. I quickly told him that he was really disgusting and to never call me again. I deleted and blocked that number, deleted the post about the dress, and also my entire Craigslist account. So yeah, I really don't think that I'll ever get back on Craigslist.